Hey everybody, Lisa Miller here. I'm just at my beautiful Ohope beach in Whakatane, New Zealand. So there we go. I have done a similar live in my own Facebook group. So this is on my profile picture. So if you watch the live in the Facebook group, it's pretty similar. Could have been out there surfing today. Didn't get my act together this morning. Didn't even bring my board over because I live like a 10-minute drive away. But I'm on my way to see my lovely friend Robin, so that's okay. There's always another day because there's never not enough surf, because there's never a lack, okay? There's never any lack. And I should have probably done this live here and then shared it to my group, but what I did is I did one in my group and I'm doing another one. So I'm just going to share this to another group though. Okay, so I wanted to talk about something. I haven't been on lives for a little bit, but I want to talk about, are you leaping or are you looping? Or are you looping or are you leaping? What do I mean by that? Your brain loops naturally. It has a looping feedback system. It's like going on a record and being stuck on the same track. So unconscious patterning brings that loop. So any patterning we have, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is creating the loop. So if you're unconsciously creating a lack of money, then that stays unless you bring some awareness to that loop. And it's on this loop and we don't realize it's on a loop because no one's trained us in this stuff. When we were little, no one trained us that we were on a loop and that actually it wasn't our real reality. We weren't told it wasn't our real reality. We weren't told it was just an unconscious brain pattern that we brought in from family members, from society, from cultural, social, economic programming and conditioning when we were little. We weren't born looping in our brain. Our brains were in theta. They were open and conscious and aware, and it's like we're in a photocopier. It's like our brains are photocopying. It just brings in everything around us. So if you were born on another planet, just using a funny thing, and it didn't have shame and blame and anger and rage, you wouldn't have it. Because you were born here and then wired that in from society, right? So we're on this loop. We're on this loop and we don't even know we're in it. That's why it's called an unconscious loop. And that's why I do Boss in My Brain, because unless you actually interrupt this unconscious loop of the brain, you can't leap. You'll leap sometimes in certain areas where you don't have an unconscious pattern. So you might be really good with money and you're always leaping, like the jump, leapfrog, leaping from pad to pad and things happening for you and you're creating amazing stuff. That's really awesome. But you might have other areas like relationships or family or work or your career where you've got a pattern around poverty, or you've got a pattern around you're not good enough, or you've got a pattern around people don't treat me right, whatever that is, and that creates this unconsciousness. So you might have areas where you're really conscious and where you've rewired it, or it was never wired in, right? Some people just don't have problems with money because it was never wired in when they were little. But then, and I don't mean problems, but just an unconscious pattern, and other people do. So you're either going to be looping in this unconsciousness or you're leaping, and that is a loop too, but it's a loop of celebration, joy, ease, fun, abundance. And I'm wondering if there's anyone on here. I can't see any comments. It's been happening a lot lately. Or abundance, right? It's a loop too, but this other one is a real Deja Poo loop. You're just bringing in the same old crap because our brain creates it. It creates, the unconscious pattern is there. It creates our thinking, our acting, who we are, our way of being, which is the energetics. So if you hate yourself and it's unconsciously there, but you go around treating yourself like that, your energy is that. You project that out into the world, and the quantum physics of it are you entangle yourself with more of it, and your brain just keeps seeing more of it because you'll have a filter that matches it. Our RAS, reticular activating system, just matches your beliefs up to now, shows you those beliefs, and keeps bringing more of it in. It's a filtering system that just keeps bringing more in. I'm going to keep driving, so I won't be looking at the screen, but I'm going to drive as I talk about the rest of it, and we might lose each other as I come around because New Zealand's very windy and hilly. Not so many hills I'm going on at the moment, but there will be definitely some windiness. So yeah, I might lose you, but I'm heading out of my beautiful little place that I'm looking for a house in Ohope, and I'm heading to Ohiwa, which is a beautiful harbour attached to the sea. So the sea is being fed into this harbour and out of that harbour. So yeah, so we have this looping system. It loops around and around and around, and that's why we'll try a tool maybe and it doesn't quite work. it doesn't work, and then we're back to the beginning, or I'll try to be confident. Let's look at confidence. Now, confidence, you can't really learn it. You really just got to give things a go. You really just got to get out and then have a go and go, yeah, I did it. That part worked, that part didn't. But we're always given tools to try and be more confident. And if you've got an unconscious pattern there underneath about confidence, or about, I can't talk to people, I can't get up in front of people, it won't matter what other tool someone gives you. If you don't rewire that pattern, it's unlikely that your confidence is going to shift, because that is your underlying pattern, and the pattern is stronger than what you think you can do. Unfortunately, it's a reptilian part of your brain. It's millions of years old, this technology, and it's way stronger than you consciously going, I'm going to become confident today. Because underneath it, it is driving all behaviors, okay? So you can't just say, I am confident today, I am amazing, and it will shift. It will give you some calm, it will give you some of that, but it's not going to shift it long term. It won't shift it because you haven't rewired the pattern. So all my coaching is around rewiring the pattern. Hi Craig, how are you? I don't know you. Great to have you on here. So we're just talking about that whole unconsciousness, brain patterns, and how our brain is looping, or we're leaping. So we're either looping the old crap round and round, the old what I call the deja poo, or we're leaping. So what do we have to do about this? Number one, you have to acknowledge you are not your brain patterns. You are not your brain pattern. You're not a brain. But you feel like you are, because when you're little, you don't. You just have this deep knowing. You follow your gut. You walk around the corner, you run into a friend. Might not be gut feeling for you. Other people have different parts of their bodies that they're using. You follow your gut knowing, and you walk down there, and you manage to catch the only fish in the stream no one else does. The adults don't, but you do. This has always happened with my kids. My daughter would catch a fish and I wouldn't, right? So children have this natural capacity for flow and ease and abundance because they're not in here. And then we train them in it. I'm an ex-school teacher. I train kids to think. And we do need thinking. But when it comes to your deep knowing, when it comes to joy and abundance and bliss, thinking doesn't help, because you go back into the old unconsciousness. So you really have to acknowledge, I am not my brain. I am a being. And I call it the superconscious being. That's the part of you that just knows where to go. That's the part of you that's aware and open and receiving. Knows to go down that shop because that thing's half price, but you don't know how you know that. Knows to go into your child's room because they're sick and vomiting, but you didn't hear them. But you walk in and go, I knew something wasn't right. That's the knowing you have that is beyond the brain, and it uses the body. Our body shows us those things with tingling or pain or heaviness, or just this feeling to go there. And I've driven down wrong white roads before, and I've driven down wrong roads because I've ended up where I've meant to be, and I'll run into someone or I meet a new person, right? That's not just bad luck or good luck. We've created it from our superconscious being. So it's really acknowledging you are not your brain. You aren't a brain. You're a human being. If we were a brain, we would be called human brains. So on some level we knew that, to call ourselves a being, but we are trained out of the being. And the being does presence. The being does in the momentness. The being does allowance of everything in this moment, and then creating from this moment, not trying to force the future or trying to fix the past. That's what the being does, right? But a brain does, I'm bad, I'm wrong, last time I did this, and it just shows you more of it. So that's what I mean by the looping. The reticular activating system loops the same stuff. Your filtering system, your RAS, and there's other filtering systems too. I don't understand all of it. But there's other filtering systems too. But what it's doing can only show you what you know to now. So if you've been crap in relationships, you'll keep seeing more of it. If you find it hard to make friends, you'll just see more evidence every time you go to talk to someone, because you've got a deep, deep-seated belief and conviction based on these unconscious patterns that you can't make friends easily. So what happens is, every time you go to make a friendship, that is there. It's operating. And it's stronger than this, because you'll be saying, I want to make new friends. I'd really like to. This would be really cool. But that unconscious pattern is rising and causing a way of being. And that's why you can't be stronger than it most of the time, because it's the way of being. It's actually your thinking, your thoughts, your deep patterns create a way of being, and the way of being then creates more of them. So the way of being is what actually brings what's available to you with your brain. They work together, but this way of being is the energetics. So of course, if your way of being and your way of thinking deep down is I'm crap with friends, then your energetics are that. And that person will pick up on it and be like, oh, I'm not sure about them. I don't know if I want to be their friend. Not because you're not a kind person, not because you're not an amazing individual, but because they've sensed something about you. And it's like putting up a big barrier. They will sense the barrier. They'll sense your worry. They'll sense your concern. So that's why we have to become the boss of our brains and step back into our superconscious so we can actually be the true being that we are, and then we actually can create beyond unconsciousness, beyond lack of awareness, beyond those things. So really say to yourself, okay, it's just my brain. And that's what you have to say. It's just data. It's just data. It's a story, because you were not born in lack. No child lacks, and you know what I mean by this. All kids are like, wow, I want more, mummy, give me more. All little kids ask for more. Even my 16-year-old is still like, thinks there's no end to money in my bank account, right? They don't see lack. They see abundance, they feel abundance, and they sense it because they're in their deep knowing. They're a super conscious being when they come into those little bodies. And then of course it's wired out of us. So it's like we have to bring ourselves back to that childlike state again. We have to bring ourselves back to that deep knowing in who we are. And it's not as hard as you think, but the first thing is to acknowledge that. I see myself as a science experiment, so I am willing to try anything if I think it's going to work. I am willing to be open and available and receiving any tool. If it doesn't work, I throw it out. It's not about that it's wrong, it's just didn't work for me. Like affirmations don't work for me, and they're not working for 99% of my clients. And they don't work because the unconscious brain is still operating. I can't see the name on there. Is that Venna? Hi Venna, how are you? The unconscious brain is still operating, so you can say affirmations to the cows come home. Well, I can, and they don't work unless I already know it in my deep consciousness that I am powerful. For me, it switches my brain into a fighting that. My brain goes into polarity. My brain starts to fight the affirmation, and it brings up my unconsciousness and goes, no, you're not powerful. It doesn't now because I don't do it, but that's what it used to do. I can give you examples of what I used to do 10 years ago. Never ever worked for me, and we're being sold lies sometimes that these tools work for everyone, but they don't. So you've got to find a coach or someone, if you're willing to rewire your brain, that's going to try something different. And my tools are pretty unique. There's other people using them, but not many in the coaching thing, because a lot of people are still working in the brain. They're not going deep down to understand the unconsciousness that drives and triggers your behavior. And with tools like journaling and questioning, I have really cool questioning tools, and meditations and these energetic activations I do, which are just like a meditation, but they get us to shift things in the body and being. You can bring awareness to the pattern, and once you've brought awareness, it can't operate. So once you see that you have a pattern around poverty, you'll catch it. The more you see it, the more you catch it. You go, here I go again, hang on a minute. That's just data. That's just a story. Stop telling old rubbish to yourself, just a story. And then we go into using a question, what else is possible here? And we rewire the brain to start looking for a new possibility. It really is that simple. The tools are really simple, but people need time with them because their brain is so strong and they've been in this pattern for so long. And I'm stopped at something here. I'm stopped at a roadworks thing, so that's why I can talk to you like this. The brain has been in those patterns for 40, 30, 50 years. I'm 52, so my brain has been in these patterns for at least 40 years. That we have to have time and someone to support us to bring the awareness. Because you don't know what you don't know. Okay? You don't know what you don't know. You don't know why you're creating poverty. You don't know why you keep having arguments with your son over the same thing. Like, why does this annoy me so much? Why am I drinking all the time? Whatever it is, why am I not creating more money? why have I got this whole poverty thing going on? Yet I work really hard and there's always bills. It will be because of unconsciousness. You will lose money, or money will go because you have some pattern around poverty. And that's how it was for me. I had a massive pattern around poverty. It took me 5 years by myself to rewire it. With a couple of friends too, that we all worked together and did, they're not coaches, but they are coaches, They are healers too in their own right. But we did this work together and used these tools, and then of course out of that came clients for me, and people like, how did you do that, Liz? Can you help me? That's how I started my coaching business. I'm an education consultant, so I do understand the brain and I understand how people learn, but I'm not a trained coach. But you don't have to be. If you've lived this, and I've lived it, I lived this poverty story for 40 something years, and I retrained myself out of a lot of trauma and stuff. You don't have to be a trained coach, but I am a trained teacher and a trained educational consultant, so I do understand about learning and how the brain is. And I understand sort of how people tick and how children tick, and the difference between a 5-year-old and a 55-year-old. Their openness, and that's why I loved them so much. They made me so happy and gleeful and joyful when I was with them, because they weren't in stories. They think they can do everything. Actually, they know anything is possible. It's not thinking. They know everything's available to them. And then by 7 or 10, they're starting to judge themselves. They're starting to be mean to themselves. They're starting to compare themselves. And it's all out of the brain pattern. You are not those things, my beautiful friends. You're an infinite being with infinite abundance, infinite bliss, infinite choices, infinite flow, whatever you choose, when you get out of your brain, okay? So you have to make this massive distinction. Am I going to loop? Am I going to leap? And even the leap is a type of looping, but the looping is bringing in gratitude and joy. And when you start to use these tools and separate yourself from your brain and you get into knowing, the loop is this beautiful feedback loop. I am gifted to all the time. I am contributed, and I see it like that. Even if it's something hard, I'm seeing it as a gift. I am gifted to all the time. I'm celebrating myself and other people, because that's how I've trained my brain, the reticular activating system, the filtering system, but also I'm in my knowing, not in my brain. So as I'm driving along here, this talk is coming from my deep knowing, my superconscious, not from my brain. My superconscious now feeds my brain. My conscious brain is not fed from my unconscious brain. It's fed from my superconscious knowing. So yeah, do this, guys. Have a look at yourself and see where you're looping, or are you leaping? Have a look and see, do I have some patterns here that are really, that are really, causing me stress and overwhelm. And I work mainly with women, some men, and the women that are stressed out to the max and overwhelmed and forcing action and not in flow because they have to serve others, because they're putting others first, because they're mothers, and that's the conditioning around being a mother. And they feel like they have to be everything for everyone, but they're nothing to themselves. And 8 years ago, that was me, and I was on the brink of a breakdown. I was suicidal. My marriage broke up. I had nowhere to go. 2 kids, my mum's sick, and I got left with 5 years no credit, or bad credit, out of my marriage. And I knew if I carried on with this looping thinking, I was not going to be able to look after my kids and create a beautiful life for them. And I wasn't going to have to look after my mum for the last 3 or 4 years of her life. And I wasn't going to be able to get any money to get a rental, buy a new car or whatever. So I had to shift. And some of it was quicker and some of it was slow, because I did a lot of it by myself. I didn't meet this other 2 friends till 3 or 4 years ago. So I did a lot of it by myself. So I am the living proof you can do it, because I've done it. And it's not arrogance. I'm just telling you,